Good morning, welcome to the 7th of my series, Path to a Perfect 10, the road to Domino's, Same Time, Verse On-Premise, Traveller, etc. version 10, due out later this year. My name is Gab Davis, I'm an admin, a problem solver, and I work with IBM products and things that integrate with them. So we've talked before about the various stages in our path to a perfect 10. We've been working on Are We Ready? But today we're going to jump forward a bit and we're going to talk about what can I do in advance. So why are we jumping forward? We're jumping forward because it's time to talk about how to beta test. So for those of you that don't know, there is a beta out for Domino 10 and Notes Client 10. The first beta came out about 10 days ago in restricted release. That means a small group of people who applied to test have been given access to the code and asked for feedback. The reason companies tend to do this restricted release first is to cut through the first layer of issues before it goes on wider release. So some of us have been working with the beta under NDA. A second larger public beta is due later this summer, which is going to be available for everyone and will include more products and functionality. Currently, we're just beta testing some of the products. I don't know what's going to be in the second beta test, and we'll all find out when that comes out later this summer. So since there is a beta and there's a beta approaching, it's a good time to talk about how we beta test and what we're trying to achieve. So what I call focus beta testing helps you and helps HCL, who are the developers of the product. You get to discover if there are likely to be any issues in your environment you need to plan for. HCL get to be told of any problems and fix them before they have a gold release. You get to highlight features that you like, want more of, or are missing. At this late stage, it's unlikely a new enhancement will make it into the gold release because they're committed to that version 10 release, but they're also working on version 11, and if it's a problem or a bug or a small feature, it's possible it'll be incorporated. In general, when we beta test, everybody wins. The development company wins, IBM wins on their licensing, you win on deploying the product. I call this focus beta testing because a deep dive into features that are important to your business is the most useful way of testing. Just installing a beta and then attacking it with no real plan is not useful for you. So, first rule of beta testing, never test in production. No matter how small your production is or how tempted you are or how well other people say the beta is, never test in production. Second rule of beta testing is always test with real data. Now those two things may seem in conflict and they're not. We build a isolated copy of our production data and we use that for testing. If you have a virtual machine, having a clone of one of your production servers or two of your production servers is good. Make sure they're on a different network or at least they're not able to replicate back into the original environment. You always want to try and work with real data, and that means real mail files, real Domino directory, real configuration settings. And of course, the third rule of beta testing, always read the documentation before starting. 10 minutes of reading the documentation will save you hours later. They will put things in the beta documentation that tells you of things they know don't work. Beta is not meant to be a gold release. There will be things in the beta that are planned for fix already. There will be things that they know that you have to do to install it correctly. Read the documentation. There will always be a README with the beta. So let's talk about testing, the actual testing itself. What I like to do is divide my testing into priorities. These priorities are what would be considered business critical. Those would be what I consider a hard stop. Functionality that if I upgraded the server has to work. What would be a loss of functionality? Things that we currently use, we'd like to continue using, but if it's not available, maybe something else is. It might be a change in a way we do things or a change in functionality. And then the third thing we test is what would be improved functionality or features. So by nature, we all, if we're engineers, if we're geeks, we want to test the cool new stuff before we test the existing stuff. That's the exciting stuff, to have a look at things that are new. But those aren't the things that will stop you upgrading. The things you need to look at is your business critical stuff and your functional stuff first. So understand what features would be a hard stop if they don't work. Understand what features would provide benefit to your company so you can test those. And also understand what impact the software would have on your existing environment, such as is it going to require a hardware and operating system upgrade. So let's look at core services. So when we're looking at Domino environment, core services could include mail, if you use Domino for mail, which includes routing, message fidelity. You're going to want to test sending messages in and out of the company and making sure everything works. Rules, personal rules, server rules, the client behavior, using existing clients against a new server. So if you've got older clients, how they behave against this new server. Certainly Traveler if you're using mail. So those are all kind of core mail services. If your mail servers talk to other servers that may not be upgraded, then you need to test that. Then we have calendar services, things like looking up across servers or versions. So you might have a part of a company or a group you talk to that is running a totally different either server or version that you might want to test that lookup still work. Interoperability with other systems and behavior of existing entries. If you've got calendar entries that say repeating appointments, what happens if you edit those and reschedule them? Do you get the expected behavior? If you go to book a room, what happens there? Make sure to test the operating system you use or will be using. Don't set up on CentOS to test it if CentOS isn't what you're going to be using in production. Then we have things that fall under business critical. You might have web services, in which case you want to check HTTP performance. Make sure your existing configuration settings still work okay. Why wouldn't they? Well, some of you have very old configuration settings, like version 5 configuration settings. So I'm not saying that is the case, but it's possible at some point some of these old settings might start to be deprecated because IBM HCL don't think you're using them anymore. Usually we know about that in the documentation, but it's always something I like to test. There'll be an upgraded directory design for version 10. You're going to want to upgrade your test directory and test that. Then you're going to want to look at databases, things like database performance, full text index build time, build performance, and of course cluster behavior if you have clusters. So in the beta, in version 10, they might have rewritten the way clustering works, the way clustering replication works. That's something you're going to want to test. And then we have things like loss of functionality. So a lot of companies are often reluctant to upgrade because they're terrified their applications won't work. They might not have the developers anymore, or the company developed it might have gone away. They might even have a hidden design. So they tend to panic and think, well, we know it works on 8.5.2, we're going nowhere. Don't panic. Test your applications behave the way you expect. Put them on the new servers. Nothing has significantly changed in the core behavior of the server. Your applications are most likely to work. Use DDM to spot any errors reported on the console. Things like monitor long-running agents, high CPU, high memory, but test the application. Don't worry that it won't work. Test if it will work. Then we have extension manager services. You might have add-ins, virus protection admins, mail scanning admins. You might have Secure Track or Midas or any one of a huge function of extension manager tools. So test those, speak to the third-party supplier, see if they're supporting version 10 and when they will support version 10. And then we have add-on tools, things you might have installed or bought to run under Domino that give you additional features. And again, you need to test those and speak to the provider about if they're not supporting it now, when do they think they will support it? All of that leads into your plan, because that's going to tell you if you're going to lose any functionality or whether you might need to upgrade ancillary products as you move forward. Then let's talk about new features. Test what you use now before testing what you'd like to use. Test against production data. Test things like upgrading mail files to a new template, testing upgrading your directories, testing upgrading the ODS. Consider what new features are important to you as part of your upgrade. Clustering enhancements, security and identity management changes. There are lots of new features coming. All of that will be in the beta documentation. Have a look at that and decide which of those are important to you, because not all of them are equally important. Some of them are of huge interest, and those are the ones you want to test. You can't test everything thoroughly. So let's talk about beta testing the Notes client. So there will be a Notes client. You're going to want to test a new install against your existing server, a new install against upgraded servers. You're going to want to test upgraded installs. HCL have said if you're on 901 Perfect10 client, they should offer a seamless upgrade straight to version 10 via a push from the server. That's something you're going to want to test, but a lot of your clients might not be on Perfect10. So consider testing upgrade your clients from the version they will be on. And that includes upgrading the personal address book design and ODS upgrades. I will say now, Mojave, which is the next release of Apple's operating system, will not work with Notes 901. It will at some point work with Notes 10, but that's going to be much nearer release date, since Mojave itself is still very much in beta. So until they release their gold code, HCL have really nothing to test against. Let's talk about beta testing same time 10. We're only upgrading the community server, which is chat. So you're going to want to test, does chat work the way you currently use it? Or are you a buddy list there? Does this new feature, which is persistent chat, allow you to log in as multiple clients concurrently? Does that work in the sense of all the conversations kept up to date on all the clients when you're logged in? And obviously, if you have some of the WebSphere elements, meetings or proxy, you're going to want to verify that those elements, which are not going to be part of the upgrade plan, still continue to work with the community server. And then we have Traveler. Now, we don't know what's going to be required. Beta testing Traveler. You may have to upgrade the DB2 data or the SQL data or the Derby data. You're going to want to test devices that are running earlier versions of Traveler accessing the server, because you're not going to redeploy Traveler to every new device. You're going to want to test deploying Traveler 10 to new devices, and you're going to want to test on any device operating system you will be supporting. So you know yourself, looking at your Traveler data, what devices people are using, you're going to want to test that that's performing okay. And then finally, we get to test the new things. So we know we have Nomad coming, which is notes applications from a tablet device. If that's an exciting thing for your business, and I think it's for all of us, that's something you're going to want to test. Node integration. If you have Domino developers, if you are a Domino developer, then the node integration piece isn't so much aimed at you as it is web developers who work with Node and don't really know Domino. So depending on what developers you have and you work with, you may want to test the node integration. And then we have the new Domino query language, which is going to allow you, Domino General Query Framework, allow you to run queries outside against Domino, querying a Domino database, multiple views, multiple data, to get the results you want. There's more on DGQF. This was only announced last week. There's more coming up, and if you're going to be at Collabsphere in Ann Arbor next week, there are 2 large presentations and the developer of the product there as well, if you want to actually talk to about it. Understand what you hope to achieve from deploying any new features and define your own use case to test against. Don't rely on other people doing the testing if this is an important feature for you. You can't test everything, but if something is critical for your upgrade, if something is going to help the business, then that's something you're going to want to test. So that's our kind of guide to beta testing. Where are we now? So beta testing can be wide-ranging and hugely time-consuming. The most useful form of testing for you and HCL, IBM, is for you to establish if the upgrade will deliver the core features you need with no loss in service. That's your baseline. Beta test is also a great opportunity to evaluate new features and products that will bring improved services and value to your business. If you can say, we're going to upgrade to version 10 and it's going to give us these things which our business really needs, that's a good opportunity. That's something you should be looking at. And finally, it allows you to plan for the future upgrade by understanding what may need to change in your environment. So this whole Perfect 10 series is about planning to make our eventual upgrade easier. Beta testing helps with that planning. It allows us to identify how smooth the upgrade is going to be and any issues we can address beforehand. So next up, we're going to be going back to our plan, and we're going to be talking about upgrade priorities and dependencies. So how to plan for our upgrade, and after that we'll be looking at estimating work effort and downtime. So thank you very much for joining me, and speak to you next time.